there, it's Jan. I have a brand new tarot deck, which I'm going to review for you. Let's get started. This is the Pagan Otherworlds tarot deck by Uusi Design Studios. And I am really excited to have this deck and really excited to review it for you. So let's work our way from the outside in. It comes in this kind of a box, which has actually really cool artwork on the sticker and the little label, which sort of sets the tone for the rest of the deck. But it is just a standard card deck type box, like regular playing card deck type box. So it's beautiful, serviceable, but not as sturdy or elaborate as what some other decks come in. But I find that absolutely fine because with each deck from Uusi, you get a tarot bag that has their logo on it in this sort of Gothic, Germanic font. And I love that. And I prefer to keep my decks in bags anyway, so this saves me having to buy a separate bag. And I will keep the box, but I will likely put it on a shelf somewhere and just keep it. Let's begin by talking about some of the unique things about this deck. The first thing that's unique is there are additional cards. So they have included in their deck a series of moon cards. So you see the moon in its varying phases, all the way to the new moon. And that's really interesting because there are lots of ways you could be incorporating the moon, the energy of the moon and the various moon phases into a tarot reading. So there's an innovation here and an invitation to use your tarot deck in a new and different way. They've also created a new Majors card. It's called the Seeker, and you see it has the lenticle, the infinity symbol, and you see the Seeker sort of piercing the veil between this world and the other world, which is, of course, the theme of this deck, the Pagan Otherworlds. The back of the deck has a really nice pattern on it. The card stock is a little bit thinner than my standard Rider-Waite deck. That doesn't necessarily bother me though, because the cardstock is flexible and resilient. So I've seen some tarot decks that the cardstock, if you did this with the cardstock, it's fragile and it would actually crack and bend, and the bend would not come out of the card. But these cards are really flexible, as you can see. They have on the front, particularly, it's easy to see, a sort of a textured linen kind of finish. I don't know if you'll be able to see that in the video, but when you look at it, there's sort of an embossed linen type texture on the cards. The only downside for me about these cards is that they're really slidey. They're really slick and slippery. Now, I never let things like the texture of the card or the slickness of it bother me. First of all, it's great if you do what I call a cauldron shuffle. This is where you just sort of stir things up as if it's in a pot or a cauldron. So with really smooth, slick cards, this is really easy. It goes really easily. So potentially that's an advantage. The thing about how a tarot deck is made in terms of its materials, whether it's thick or thin, slidey or not, is that you get used to it. If you love the imagery on the deck and it speaks to you, actually physically handling the deck is just something that you need to grow accustomed to and learn how to handle it. The size of the deck, again, is a little bit bigger. This is my Rider-Waite deck. So you've got wider and taller. So, and I have pretty big hands. I do find these a little bit harder to shuffle and to handle, but again, I will just get accustomed to how I handle this deck. So I'll shuffle it for you, and you can see they shuffle and they slide together nicely. So let's take a look at the artwork on the cards themselves. The artwork is absolutely stunning. The majors and court cards have their names written in a sort of a warm brown ink, sort of a burnt umber or sepia toned ink in beautiful handwriting style. Let me take you through some of my favorite cards in this deck so that you get a feel for their energy and the artwork. So here's our Fool, how we begin our tarot journey. This is the Moon, and you'll see the symbolism and the reference back to the Smith-Waite deck, but really a fresh take on that card. Here's another one of my favorite cards from this deck, the Tower. I love the perspective of looking up at the tower and the woman falling from the tower. This is Justice. Again, you see her characteristic scale and sword, yet a completely different kind of imagery for portraying the archetype represented by justice. The court cards are some of my absolute favorite. Here we have the Knight of Cups. We've got the King of Pentacles, the Knight of Wands, one of my favorite, the Queen of Wands, the King of Wands, and the King of Swords. So that should give you a feel for what this deck is like. Let's look at a few of the minors. Here's the Three of Cups. So what you're missing on the Three of Cups from the standard Smith-Waite deck are the three maidens celebrating, but what you do have are the actual three cups and the reference to harvest on the bottom with the pumpkins, and that's a detail that's in the Smith-Waite deck, so a clue to lead you back to its meaning. Here we have the Five of Swords, which is, if you're familiar with the story symbolism from the Smith-Waite deck, it's the story of the pirates that fall out and fight over the treasure. You have the three swords sort of victorious and the two swords that have been defeated. So the story is there without the characters, without the actors playing their roles. Here we have the Ten of Cups, which alludes to the rainbow in the Smith-Waite deck, and the maypole there that symbolizes fecundity and satisfaction and all good things in life. So again, these are not as illustrative with a story told in pictures like the Smith-Waite deck, but enough symbolism is there for you to easily read the cards. This one, the Ten of Pentacles, references the two dogs and the town that are in the Smith-Waite card and eliminates all of the people and all of the other, the gate and the banners and things. But again, there's enough here to remind you what this card is about. Same thing with the Nine of Pentacles. We've got sort of the plants, the garden, and then the falcon up at the top, a reminder of the Smith-Waite card. So overall, I feel like these cards are easy to read. One of the things I particularly like about this deck is the artwork. And to me, since I have an art history background, it reminds me of Giotto, it reminds me of Mantegna, it reminds me sometimes of Hieronymus Bosch, and it reminds me of the fantastic little miniaturized landscapes that you see in the background of many Renaissance paintings, including Leonardo da Vinci's paintings, little town scenes and people going to the market and going about their daily lives. So it has that beautiful old world feel as well as otherworldly feel. So if that vibes with you in terms of aesthetic, and Pagan Otherworlds vibes with you as a theme, then I can highly recommend this deck. It's really quite beautiful and lovely to work with.